Welcome. Welcome to Jazz Talk. We have a wonderful guest for you today, a wonderful musician, tenor saxophone player, all-around saxophone player, and flutist, Mr. Fred Greenwell. And today I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Pleasure to be here, sir.
Welcome to the show, Freddie. And you're one of my favorite people my whole entire life. Get
out of here.
I've always loved your witticisms, and I try to remember them.
Likewise.
And being a great saxophone player has always, it's like a mentor for me, or idolizing type of situation. And it's a great privilege to be in your home, your lovely home today, and with the kitty cats.
Right. Cornish Rex.
Cornish Rex.
Sydney and Fred.
Sydney and
Father
Fred.
and son.
Father and son.
So it all works out perfect.
That's great.
They're watching over there.
Yeah. And they keep you pretty busy?
Oh yeah, they're a very big help though. They help me out with a lot of things that only cats can help you with.
Who's playing in the background musically?
That's Sonny Rollins and Shelly Mann and Ray Brown. They did a trio, and these are some tracks from that. Sonny Rollins has always been my idol, and Miles, those people like that, and Bird, Charlie Parker. They are very creative people and very exciting people for me. Yeah. Lester Young too.
Lester, yeah.
Lester Young was absolutely strong, very important, like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
In our world.
In the world.
That was made in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles?
He made several tunes that were on the Western theme. Like this one is I'm an Old Cowhand.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm an Old Cowhand.
And he did Wagon Wheels.
Ah.
Some tunes like that. I don't think he did Oklahoma. But It was a marvelous thing to hear, just saxophone and bass and drums play like as though they had guitars and pianos and everything. They just made a complete musical selection out of it.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Pretty powerful. Huh?
Powerful stuff.
Powerful stuff, yeah.
Well, we have Fred Sidney Greenwell, premier saxophone player, and has played all over the world. And through my career, I've talked to people that have worked with Freddie, and Freddie, you are a true legend in your time.
Mm.
Yeah. And when did you being back home now, when did you more or less leave Seattle to the bigger world?
Well, I'll tell you what happened was that there was World War II, and I was in the Navy, and I was lucky enough to go into the Navy Music School and then get in a band and go on a carrier, and then ran into different situations where I was able, when we got over to Pearl Harbor, I was able to get in a small group that Claude Thornhill had with Raleigh Morehouse and Jackie Cooper and Ted Vesley and Dennis Day, and we had a small entertaining group, and we played all over the Pacific, and then I got back on the ship again. The ship went back to the East Coast, and we were ferrying. It was at the end of the war, and we were ferrying troops back from Europe and into New York. So we were able to get right to 52nd Street a lot, right during that really boiling time when Charlie Parker and all those people were, and Dizzy Gillespie were on 52nd Street. And then I was able to get off the ship and got discharged and came to Seattle from there because Raleigh Morehouse had impressed me so much. So I just thought my mother and brother had moved out here too. So I came out here in 1946 after I was discharged and played at the Trianon with Kurt Sykes for a year or two, very good dance band.
Yeah.
And I was exploring after hours clubs and jazz music, trying to learn how to really be, involved in the creating music, which all those people do so great, Miles and those people. And then I was able to get in a band that went to Los Angeles out of Seattle. Jimmy Zito was that band. I left from the Trianon then.
Jimmy Zito.
He had a nice band for quite a while. He had 4 trombones and 1 trumpet and 5 saxes.
Ooh.
So it was a beautiful sound.
God, what a sound that would be.
But that got me down to L.A., and I was in L.A. playing with different things that I didn't really care for L.A. too much. I wanted to get to New York where I felt there was more creativity going on. There was a lot of activity and everything was boiling in New York, seems to me, you know. But a lot of people love L.A., but I really wanted to get
Now,
to
what
New York.
year was this?
This was in 47, probably.
47.
That's when this, but let's see, before I came out to Seattle, I wanted to show you this picture on the wall
Yeah.
of,
Yeah, I'll see right here.
was when I was just getting out of the service, and Charlie Parker was playing there at the Spotlight Club in 52nd Street. And this is Stan Levy, and he worked with Charlie a lot. We'd go down there every night and see him. Leonard Gaskin, a bass player, and Charlie Parker, and myself, I was able to, he let me sit in that night.
Jeez.
And some friends I was with got a photographer to take a picture of it. It was just sensational experience. Dexter Gordon was supposed to be there, but he was sick. He was sick off and on. But Charlie Parker always showed up and always just played great.
What was the name of that club?
Spotlight Club.
The Spotlight Club.
Spotlight Club,
And where was-
1946.
And where was that at in New York?
52nd Street, Broadway.
Oh my gosh.
That was, there was 5 or 6 clubs there. But then that was when I came out to Seattle right after that. And then I just wanted to show you, if I could, this picture when I went down to L.A. and ran into Wardell Gray and Dexter Gordon and Teddy Edwards on Central Avenue. And I used to go and jam with all those people. That's Wardell there.
No,
It was a wonderful experience to be with those people and to see and listen to what they were doing. And I got with Alvino Ray there in L.A., and that was a good working, traveling band. And I got back to New York that way.
Oh, so you jumped off the band then?
Yeah. And hung around New York and had a few different kinds of day jobs. I painted my share of fire buckets there.
Oh.
Those are popular jobs in the
Popular
daytime.
I see.
And it's about the only thing you can do in New York is to go out with bands at that time. That was in the late 40s and 50s.
To go out of 802.
Yeah, 802, just travel and you get different kinds of quality of musicians on those bands, and sometimes you'd be in a band and there'd only be one other guy that you could really, have a good time with or talk to and hang around. But it was always worth it because generally it was a very helpful and very instructive and progressive thing to do, to run across these people. And you'd make a lot of friends and go out and play a lot. And it was it helped your playing and it helped your brain too, to run across people that were just lots of times, 1,000 times better than you were, you know.
Yeah.
But I know I always tried, and I seem to be fortunate enough where when I would be around somebody who was really good, I really just enjoyed being around them, you know. I didn't
Yeah.
feel, you know,
Right.
overwhelmed by it because I enjoyed so much hearing people
Yeah.
really put out music. And I had the feeling, I think it was probably because of having had good instruction when I was a kid, to know that, well, it takes time,
Yeah.
you know, to become a decent performer. You just can't do it all the time, and the best way is to be around good ones and to absorb it and keep working on your own
Right.
and
Yeah.
build a thing, even though you don't feel like you're doing much day by day. You are adding to your professionalism and your way of playing, and it's a hard thing to do because it's particularly it's the poor kids today that find that they are in love with music, modern music. I'm not speaking of speaking of somebody who, if they're smart, they will study classically and get the good classical background rather than just getting a hit or miss
Right.
coaching from somebody.
Yeah.
But get in there and study the thing and learn the music basically, and then get involved with the modern music too. But those fellas are in a tough spot because these days there aren't as many places to go and jam and practice or bands around like that, because most people, the customers that would be in a club, are all home watching TV, you know.
Yeah. Right.
And it's a lot better product than they would get generally if they went out to nightclubs. So they don't. There's no reason for them to go to clubs. And then on top of that, it seemed to me that I don't know how the actual value of the thing would go, but it seemed to me that the quality of people that ran clubs was pretty low.
Yeah.
Because it was mainly a gimmick thing. It was like a sort of a cast off from vaudeville and actually carnivals.
Yeah.
Because these people would want to entertain people, you know, and take their money.
Yeah.
And they found that music helped somewhat to get to the people. So the people suffered from that generally. And the musicians just tried to get work jobs and try to work at playing their jazz music. And the whole thing was kind of tough because there wasn't, you had to have your own set of values. And most jazz musicians have a set of values that are different than other people because they have to be intense about it, because it's it's easy to get depressed
Yeah.
if everybody just treats you like you're, you know, not doing anything intelligent.
Yeah. Really. Well, now your father was and your mother were both musicians, right?
Right, yeah,
And
they
your
were.
father
they were
was a
classical.
professional
He was a cellist.
cellist.
My mother was a piano and violin
Piano,
player.
violin.
And so when she came out to Seattle, she and my brother, after my father had passed on, they came to Seattle, and she was able to get involved with a teaching studio that was based in Los Angeles, but had studios here. And so she got involved in that, and she made a good career out of that. She finally ended up with her own studio
Oh,
a few blocks from here.
great.
That she worked for 20 years in that studio, and she had thousands of pupils.
That's fantastic.
And she always wanted me to come back and, you know, help her teach there.
Yeah.
But I wasn't able to settle my activities into any channel them
Yeah.
into a so-called intelligent thing. You know, I was always straining, trying to get that music
Yeah.
figured out, jazz music.
Right.
But nowadays, there's a lot of, it's a lot easier to teach and play jobs and try to keep involved in jazz music too, even though jazz music is hard to keep going. You have to. It's a tough, like Vito Musso said, music is a hard instrument.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's a tough ball game.
But my mother did okay, and
And your dad played the saxophone
he
and
played
clarinet.
the saxophone and clarinet also, and he played jobs on that when he wasn't playing classical jobs. You know, to make a living.
Yeah, sure, right. Augment your
But
income.
he was a cello player actually, and
Yeah.
he was a marvelous cello player. I used to listen to when I was a kid. You know, before I even considered music, he'd be practicing his long tones and his symphony stuff. My mother too, but mainly my father was a very diligent craftsman on the cello.
on the cello.
And I would hear that, you know, 24 hours a day.
Oh, boy.
And it was kind of mystifying to me sometimes.
Yeah.
It was
What
a pretty powerful sound, a cello.
Yeah, really. Fantastic instrument.
Yeah, very
Just
wonderful
fantastic.
instrument.
I just love that. Always been a great cello lover.
Yeah, cello is a sensational instrument.
Yeah. I remember a wonderful girlfriend of mine played the cello. She was blonde, and she had this cello. It's like it's like wonderful thing to remember.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Wonderful thing to remember.
Yeah, it is. And girls can play cello and play violin and flute and gee, boy. I just think it's hard not sometimes to think that they have a little something extra, you know. But I guess it's because they do work hard at it, very hard, and that's the secret.
Yeah, right.
Is the labor.
The labor.
The actually sweat and blood that you put out
Hard work.
on your own. Hard work.
Yeah,
It's not like push-ups, but it is. It's
Yeah.
muscle control, discipline.
Right. Discipline.
And it's the only way that, and there are very few people that I think that ever have been really good players that haven't put in an awful lot of work.
Right. The discipline is
The discipline is
it's
something else.
attitude, and the attitude is just positive. I mean, it's like a focus, and your discipline has just got to be there. Like when you started, did your father? How old were you when you started the clarinet?
Well, I tried everything,
Well,
know,
you
because
tried.
there was clarinets and violins and cellos
Oh, I see.
and pianos around the house.
Oh my gosh, what a lucky
So,
guy.
just for a novelty, you know, being a kid, I'd try everything, and I generally end up breaking the instrument,
Yeah.
you know, and thinking that he wouldn't know the difference, you know.
Oh dear, I
But
see.
he would know right away if I'd knocked a cork off or something.
Ah.
And I always would say, "Oh no, it wasn't me." You know, it couldn't have been anybody else.
Could be anybody else.
Yeah.
God, an opportunity to have both parents
Well, it was
professional. You know.
they were professional, but they tried not to say one way or the other, you know, anything about music, for or against it, because they were, for some reason or another, they were just smart enough to know that there's no sense in trying to steer somebody to it or away from it.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Which my father was he always said, well, if you like it, you know, one of his things was if you like it. But my mother was generally more practical, and she'd say, don't fool with it, you know.
Yeah.
So I did. I went to high school for a couple of years and studied to be, you know, studied the stenography stuff, whatever that's called, I forget now. But then I changed to another high school and went 4 years and studied electrical maintenance because I wanted to,
Huh.
you know, supposedly have another career.
Yeah,
You know, or another something to really depend on.
Yeah.
But by the time I got out of 4 years of electrical maintenance and going through all the phases of it, you know, factories and engineering and all that has to do with electricity, and then playing in a band too, the teachers and all told me, well, if you promise you'll never use my name and never try to be an electrician, I'll graduate you.
Oh dear.
So I was, at that point, I was just glad to get out of the
Yeah.
high school, you know, but
when were you bit, like you say, when were you bit by the bug to be
I'll tell you, yeah.
a
It
pro?
was,
You know, when did that happen? What year?
probably around the early 40s,
Early 40s.
1940s, because I finally realized that I went out for spring training for football and just got beaten up terrible.
Oh, yeah,
And
right.
then I decided, well, the only way I'm going to get involved in football, because I liked sports, but I wasn't a big husky guy.
Yeah.
You know?
285 pounds.
Right, and 7'7". So I saw the band, so I thought, well, I'll try and get into the band, you know, because my father and this and that and music, and so I tried that, and I went up. I learned the clarinet, or studied the clarinet for a year or so, and then went and had an audition with the band, and I did pretty good, except they did catch me on one thing. The guy, the teacher, the band master, asked me to play a chromatic scale, half steps, and I didn't know what that was.
Oh, dear.
I had no idea what that. I had other scales that I did, you know.
Yeah, but the chromatic one
But
was
that was funny because it was
what
such a
instrument
simple.
was that?
That was clarinet.
clarinet.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then my father, I got in the band eventually, but and then my father, there was a wonderful clarinet player that he was associated with, a very wonderful. He'd studied with a famous clarinet player named Daniel Bernard, who was a monstrously good clarinet player. And this fellow really could play. He played the French style clarinet, symphony clarinet, and so I fell in love with that.
Yeah.
I really did. And then my father had some records of Andy Kirk and Earl Hines and Louis Armstrong that he used to play for his own enjoyment. And I got fascinated with hearing that, you know, those some of those solos that the fellows
Andy
would play in
Kirk's
those Andy Kirk
right.
bands.
Yeah.
And the Earl Hines bands, saxophone players, I think Bud Johnson, and there was a tenor player, one named Dick Wilson, who was really good. He was really flexible.
Yeah.
And they just made these 78 RPMs, you know, and there'd be some solos on there, and I would hear them, and I could just tell, geez, that really is good stuff. And it was much better than the Glenn Miller kind of Artie Shaw.
Yeah.
Although I liked Artie Shaw.
Yeah, yeah, right.
I liked Artie Shaw's solos and Georgie Auld and those things. But these black bands really had something that I could sense it. And it wasn't any great accomplishment on my part. It was just there, you know.
Yeah.
These guys were saying, this is a gift, this
Yeah.
jazz music.
Yeah, right, jazz.
And I
music.
thought, geez, I wonder if I could do it. And I'd, you know, play little tunes and try to play with the radio and different things like that. And I could see that what they had was a beautiful artistic thing. And that, I guess that's when I got bit,
You
you
got
know.
plugged in.
I
right
started
there.
trying to, you know, play solos and variate on different jobs. So I finally started playing jobs because I had studied the clarinet so hard, but you couldn't get any jobs if you just played clarinet.
Yeah,
I
right. Yeah.
got in
yeah.
on the saxophone, which was a lot more work for saxophone and clarinet.
Well, this Bernard guy, I've heard of him. I mean, he's a
He
famous.
played with the Philadelphia Symphony.
Yeah, famous.
Yeah,
teacher.
famous.
Yeah,
Absolutely. He's like,
absolutely famous. Yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
even in
40
instruction books.
40 years ago, 50 years ago,
Yeah. My
he was like
gosh.
James Galway is today.
Yeah.
I mean, a known, recognized artist.
Right. Big star.
Like Toscanini and that kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
Those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just even the ring of
Yeah.
his name is.
So it was
Awesome.
really good, basic symphonic stuff, and I loved it. I really did. And one of the things that affected me about not going into the serious symphony thing was this teacher. He'd had one or two other pupils that he'd trained and were really good, you know.
Yeah.
But the thing was that you got to the point where when you got to playing pretty good, then the only thing you could do was play saxophone to get some money,
Yes. Right.
you know.
Yeah. Especially.
And he was always edgy about teaching guys past a certain point because he knew that more likely they'd drift into doubling.
Oh, I see.
And it made him feel bad, because he was a purist.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he still, a few of us were able to work with him and really get in love with the symphony thing. And then one summer, it happened that Interlaken, which is a summer music camp
Yeah.
for kids, was very highly respected. And today there's thousands of summer camps, but there weren't that many summer
That's
camps
right, yeah,
at this
right.
particular period.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to that summer camp. I thought, geez, 24 hours a day, teaching of all sorts.
Yeah, what a great thing.
But all I played was clarinet. I was a good clarinet student, but they didn't have any scholarships for clarinets. You had too many genius clarinet players.
Ah,
So they said if you played oboe or
Yeah.
bassoon or something, we
You're
could get you
in.
a scholarship.
yeah.
And I always felt a little bit down about that because I really wanted to get in and get that feeling of all the symphonic thing. But I started drifting a little and working more jobs.
Mm.
But then I started thinking about that jazz music, that seemed to be just as worthy, not as established and not as respected as symphony,
Right.
but still important. American,
Right. American
American
heritage.
music,
Yeah. A gift to the
and
world.
I got involved in that and started working bands and things like that. But I still tried to keep the clarinet going for quite a while.
Yeah. Doing.
Then I started really trying to put what I had absorbed from classical clarinet on the saxophone, tenor mainly,
Yeah.
or tenor or alto.
Who did you when you went to saxophone? What was the turn? Who did you start listening to? I mean, who was the turn on that said, "Oh yeah, I'd like to." I
Well,
like that.
Of course, everybody in that period had Coleman Hawkins and Ben Webster and Don Byas.
Oh, great! Yeah.
Those are very accomplished. And I wanted to have accomplished heroes.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have fad type heroes.
Yeah.
I thought those guys were very
Forever.
worthy.
Yeah.
Well
every one
grounded
of them.
and could play any
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also there was several Count Basie records that my father had with Lester Young.
Yeah.
And one of them was Boogie Woogie. I remember that one. It was so clear.
Yeah.
It was
With Lester
sensational
Young.
Lester Young, yeah.
Ooh,
And that was a little less muscular
I see. Yeah.
than the other guys. The other
Yeah.
guys would roar and squeal and growl.
Yeah, they were
But Lester Young didn't do that. He was
cool.
top quality
Yeah.
purity.
Yeah.
And I loved that. And also, he played clarinet.
Yeah.
Sensational
clarinet. I mean,
Could really
sight.
carry it off.
Yeah. Absolutely
And
great.
he
clarinet.
also was, to my mind, a musician that could play the different styles and fit into them. He could play great Dixieland. It just
Yeah, I see.
really give you
Knocked out.
your money's worth for Dixieland and add to it.
Yeah, right.
And Buck Clayton did the same thing,
Yeah.
and Don Byas too. But Don Byas a little less of a Dixieland thing. But Buck Clayton was a good Dixieland guy too.
Yeah.
And I liked good Dixieland like that, like Louis Armstrong or Buck Clayton, Yank Lawson, those people, Muggsy Spanier.
Yeah. You know,
I liked the purity of it.
when I was in New York just a couple of years ago, Joe Jones had passed on, and
The original.
Joe
Yeah.
Jones, yeah, Papa, and so I went to his funeral, and in front of me, below, believe it or not, here's Roy Eldridge in front. There was about 450 people there, and it was like the epitome of the jazz and swing ear. There was
Yeah.
25 drummers, sitting in the front row going to give elegies, is that what you call it?
Yeah,
Elegies?
right.
And now sitting here was Buck Clayton, sitting here. Here was Gypsy and me and this jazz piano player, a friend I know. And then here's Buck Clayton over here. And then right in front of me was Roy Eldridge. And then you could start that notion of seeing, well, all these guys I've seen before, you know.
Yeah.
They're all national stars,
Yeah.
you know. And so here you'd stand up, and here was Max Roach saying, well, this Papa Joe Jones did this for me, and he was such a wonderful man. It comes
Right.
up to where Joe Jones's teacher was there, and he was like 90.